Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chai Talk with Ujatli for the Left Hook Substack. I am here with Olivia Troy. Olivia Troy has a fantastic Substack. You all know her, you all love her. You gotta please subscribe to her Substack. And today we're gonna have a big conversation about the national insecurity of the Trump administration. And there's a bunch of topics I wanted to ask Olivia about because Olivia has worked on national security. Olivia has worked on counterterrorism. Olivia has worked in intelligence. Olivia has worked in DHS. And folks, unfortunately, we have the DUI hires in charge while we have escalating crises, right? India, Pakistan, Gaza, Houthis, Israel. We have also Ukraine, Russia, COVID, rise of measles. That's also a national security crisis. And we have Pete Hegseth. So I want to start with just the people who are in charge, Olivia. To give some nightmare fuel to Americans. As all this is happening, we have Pete Hegseth. And I think there's some news items that have just dropped out of the news, which we should be deeply concerned about. But apparently, Pete Hegseth has used multiple signal chats for official Pentagon business, at least 12 signal chats, exposing not just military intelligence, but also his passwords. For people who have forgotten about Signalgate, and I always want to remind people that this is something that should not be forgotten, can you please explain to us why all of us should be terrified that the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has repeatedly been caught doing this, and we're not talking about it?
Well, it's crazy because if I had been caught doing it during my term as a national security official, if anyone else had been caught doing it, we would have been in some serious trouble. We probably would have had our security clearance revoked. I'd probably be explaining it before, a military judge. I mean, there's all these different things that it would come with. And to see this continuing ongoing, and he's basically suffered no repercussions, right? And when it first broke, I have to tell you, like, the first thing I said was, there have to be more chats. There have to be. There's no way that this is the only one. And it proved to be correct, right? I mean, we saw it with Mike Waltz, with the photo, when even Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor now, had all these different chats going on where Tulsi Gabbard was on there, Vance was on there, and I was like, I knew it. So they're
And also,
conducting
can
policy
you
this
remind
way.
folks that literally they took a photo of him last week with this chat during the cabinet hearing where everyone went around and gave verbal fellatio to Donald. So that's when they took the photo.
That's when that photo happened. So in a cabinet meeting, these signal chats were happening. And by the way, this is after the Signalgate story broke, right? So that's why it's just sort of like, it just showed the callousness of these individuals and the fact that they don't care. And so now we have Pete Hegseth. He's, what is so upsetting to me is just watching his recklessness as Secretary of Defense. And also just the fact that the military community, the intel community that sits under his leadership, no one is going to respect this guy when he's putting their own lives at risk, right, during operations. I mean, these were actual operational things that he was sharing on Signal, which is not a secured way of communicating. Yes, it's encrypted, but I'm fairly positive that foreign adversaries were probably paying attention as well. So how many other things do they know on there is my question, right? Like, how many other things are being shared on there? Who knows?
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because the Secretary of Defense, right, oversees all armed services, right? Like these are men and women who lay their lives on the line to protect our country. And when he lied about it, he lied about sharing confidential military information of a strike in Yemen. And he said, I didn't do it. And then, oops, I did it. Oh, well, who cares, right? If, God forbid, our enemies saw that information, they could have targeted and been literally waiting for our armed services and like, oh, we know exactly when they're going to strike. We know exactly who's coming. Let's kill them. Thankfully, it didn't happen. But literally, our armed services are realizing that the most incompetent people are in charge and exposing their safety and security. And you mentioned armed services members. Military.com did a piece and they interviewed a lot of service members who increasingly say that they do not respect Pete Hegseth. Can you please tell us why it's so important for the personnel to actually respect the chain of command and what happens once that respect breaks down?
Well, that's my fear for what's going on in the military and the defense community, is that here you have one of the most critical agencies in our U.S. government, right? And they are deployed around the world. And so now you have a situation where they're watching the leadership basically betray them, right? Because any one of these people would be held accountable if they had ever done something like this. I mean, they would be in some serious trouble. So one of the things that keeps me up at night that I worry about is the example that he's setting for others too, right? I mean, I think that's what everyone's looking around at each other and they're like, okay, one, I guess we don't care about protecting information anymore. That's one way to look at it. Two, why should I deploy? Why should I leave my family? Why should I put myself at risk when I have a clown show at the very top that's putting my life at risk for me without even like any care about what's happening to me, right? And so I think it impacts morale, which I know is happening right now because I've talked to people across the military and the defense community where the morale is very low. That is one big thing that's happening, and that's why someone like Pete Hegseth shouldn't be at the helm, because it really is about exhibiting responsibility and leadership at the highest levels. And the military, I mean, that is the entire bread and butter of file and rank, right? I mean, that is why this matters so much. And so I think it's just really disappointing, especially the legacy of the Pentagon, right? Think of the leadership that's gone before. At least they understood what the role was. I think they understood the weight of their shoulders of commanding all of these people under them. And then I just think, what must the generals think, right? The ones trying to figure out how they're going to lead their troops in the field when you have this overshadowing everything else.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because people forget that the last Secretary of Defense, folks, under Joe Biden was General Austin, who is an O-10 rank, four-star general, right? Who a black man who had to be perfect in order to get the job. Before him, if you're watching and you're not a Democrat, you didn't vote for Biden. Okay, suppose you voted for Donald Trump in the first administration, and his first administration, the Secretary of Defense was General Mattis, four-star general, O-10 rank. Pete Hegseth, O4 rank, Fox News host for 10 years, a man with multiple economic and alcoholic impropriety allegations, a person who paid off a woman to sign an NDA because he allegedly assaulted her, a man whose own mother wrote the most damning email I've ever read a mother write to her son, calling him an abuser of women, a person whose own Fox colleagues, right, anonymously told the New York Times were worried about him and his alcohol problems, right? A person who's completely unfit. Oh, and by the way, has all this extremist beliefs that he openly shared in his book, American Crusade, and has these tattoos on his bodies, which he appropriates. A lot of Christians have those tattoos, but in recent years, these tattoos have been appropriated by white Christian nationalists. And based on his behavior and his tattoos, his own fellow servicemen went to the supervisor and said, "We think this is an insider threat." That's the guy that they've chosen to be the Secretary of Defense, and the audacity of him in particular being the face of the anti-DEI campaign. We're going to purge the military of DEI. We're going to base it on merit. Go after women, people of color, purge the military of mentions of Jackie Robinson and the Navajo code talkers, right? Oh, and while this is happening, and we have the world's most incompetent people, Olivia, tell us why in my opinion, absolutely cruel, baseless attacks on transgender service members actually makes us more insecure, because that's what they're concentrating on. As this is happening, as we have a DUI hire, we got to purge DI and literally ban transgender individuals who are literally willing to risk their lives, who are trained. We say, nope, nope, thousands of you, we're going to purge you from our own military. Can you please explain to us why I believe that makes us less safe?
Well, I think first, it's all theatrics, right? It's going along with their agenda of performative theatrics. So really, it's not about national security at all, because these are people that are serving for the greater good of the country, first and foremost. And so
Yep.
they have the same capabilities as everyone else. My biggest concern watching what happened just now to the transgender community is I'm concerned about how that opens the door to roll back on women, on everyone else,
There you go.
right? Because it is really, that is what we're talking about here. And I'm wondering, is that the final lane? Because I think that's the direction that this is going. And so I'm watching this and I have to say, like, if that's the thing, I mean, it's upsetting to see that that is where our focus is right now when there are so many other things going on in the world, like you mentioned, India, Pakistan, all these other things are happening, and this is where our focus is. And never mind that the person who's running the entire enterprise of this whole situation is a completely reckless, incompetent individual himself. But no, now we're going to ban transgender.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because folks, the fear, the ignorance, right, when it comes to communities that are marginalized, transgender communities, less than 1%. Really, folks, if you haven't studied really difficult lives, right? Transgender people aren't crushing it. They just want to survive. And even surviving is difficult. So they're picking on literally the most marginalized community in America, less than 1%. And these are individuals who choose to serve. And now we have some in the guise, the Trojan horse of eliminating DEI. We have a DUI hire going after transgender. And I think it's important because people say, transgender, I think it's weird. I don't understand. But what they don't realize, it's a Trojan horse for women, Black people,
Yeah.
Latinos, Native Americans, and then anyone, folks, who isn't loyal. Anyone who isn't loyal, which includes white Christian conservatives, people like Miles Taylor, people like Chris Krebs. Uh, they served like you in the first Trump administration, and like you, they kind of blew the whistle and said this is an incompetent administration. With Chris Krebs, he was given the task of doing the audit of the election, and he said, "I did my job. 2020 election was clean. Biden won." And because of that, folks, just a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump has signed an executive order investigating Chris Krebs, white Christian conservative Republican man who served in the Trump administration, for potential treason. So and Olivia, I want to ask you that, once you saw Miles and Chris being targeted, you served in the first Trump administration and then you famously left. Michael Cohen, others who have spoken out, when you see the president abusing his power, going after citizens for literally doing their job, how did you feel? Because you were very public in your critiques.
Yeah, I was watching that press conference in the Oval when he was naming Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor, and honestly, I was just waiting for my name.
Mm.
I have to just be very honest and upfront about it. But I will say that as I watched that play out, the first thing I thought of was like, I will remain in the trenches and I will double down and fight with them, right? Because I think the thing is, I mean, Chris Krebs, all he was doing his job.
That's right.
Like all people are doing is telling the truth about the reality of what happened here. And now this person is back in power and he's using and abusing the power that he has, right? This is after Pam Bondi, by the way. Remind everyone that during her confirmation hearing, she sat there under sworn oath saying, that they would not use the Department of Justice for the weaponization. They spin it and they say, no, that's what Biden did. Well, we're watching this play out. So what is coming now? Because when you're targeting people in executive orders like that, simply for speaking the truth, what are you curtailing the freedom of speech there? I mean, that's pretty much retribution, and it's the retribution that Trump promised. I mean,
I don't think it's even pretty much. I think it is. It is retribution.
Right.
It's the use and abuse of power by a drunk authoritarian who's testing the limits, and he's daring the world to say, "Stop me." And I'm glad you mentioned that. This is what they told you, right? Kash Patel is trending right now because he's getting grilled because he apparently doesn't understand the due process from the Constitution. And he's trolling our elected officials. But Kash Patel on Steve Bannon's show before the election openly said that he's going to use his perch as the head of the FBI to go after Donald Trump's critics, political critics and media critics, right? Pam Bondi, that's what she's doing. Donald Trump, that's what he's doing. Donald Trump quoted Hitler, folks, before the election and said that he's open to using the military and National Guard against the, quote, enemies from within. And, Olivia, as a person who was in the office of the vice president in the first administration, Mike Pence, in your expertise as a counterterrorism and national security expert, you know, tell us about this fidelity and loyalty that people like you and those who are in the government and those in armed services have to the Constitution, regardless of your politics, right? Whether you're Republican or Democrat. Once you see that threat, that domestic threat, you say, you know what? I got to speak out because to me, Donald Trump has always been the greatest domestic threat. I'm curious about, because Miles, you, Chris, I'm sure if we talked about politics and a whole bunch of issues, we might disagree. We might agree on certain things, but there comes a point where you're like, this is more than just politics and my team. This is about the country and our national security.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I certainly maintain that to me, having seen Donald Trump firsthand, having worked in that administration, I had served under several administrations. I served in the George Bush administration. I later became a career intel officer. I served under Obama. I've seen different leaderships, right, along the way. I have never seen anything that came close to the plain disregard for just the well-being of the American people, the grift, the lies, the constant chaos of running the country in such a chaotic manner. And we're watching it play out today, right? I mean, we're watching it in a second term, and it's even worse because now you don't have General Mattis sitting at the table, right? You don't have General Mattis. I'll never forget this meeting because it was a very tense meeting on refugees and Stephen Miller when he would pontificate in his extremist immigration policies and his views of the world, where in his view, I think he has one very, very strong image of what America looks like. And certainly myself, who's a daughter of a Mexican immigrant, yourself, we would not be here. So
Yeah, it ain't you and
we're
me.
not welcome.
We're
We're not
we're
welcome.
not in that Norman Rockwell painting redone by racist Stephen Miller. Yeah, we ain't there.
Yeah, no, we're not there. And so I think, back then it was General Mattis saying, hey, great, if we're going to start to do these extreme measures, just remember the translators that worked with us in Afghanistan. Remember the Iraqis that worked with us. Remember the people that kept our troops alive at times. I certainly was deployed. I had translators traveling with me. I am grateful. I actually think I owe my life to those people. And so he's like, so please make sure that we're getting through the pipeline. They're still waiting today, right? Because once you break that system so badly, no matter what the Biden administration could do, you were never going to catch up to the backlog that they did. And I can't even imagine what has happened to it again now. And so you don't have General Mattis arguing that. You don't have people sitting at the table now that are standing there having responsible views and being actually, no, that's illegal. You can't do that. Let's not ship off immigrants to randomly to Libya with no due process. So watching this
Another
all
huge
play
piece
out.
of news, another absolutely batshit piece of news where folks who don't know, because there's so much I know, is that the Trump administration says, oh, yeah, we're not just going to send them to El Salvador. Now we're going to send people to Libya, right? We're going to send all these immigrants to Libya. Libya right now, war-torn, has two governments. And both of Libya's governments right now said, wait, we didn't agree to this. So that's what's happening. Also, in addition to everything, for those who haven't caught up on the latest news, what Olivia is talking about right now. Please continue.
So, I mean, that to me, I just saw someone that said the Libya story is horrifying. I see some of the comments here. Yeah, I had the same reaction because to me, now we've got a pattern. And so now I'm actually sitting here analyzing. We should all be sitting here analyzing. Okay, so let's map this out. Let's pull the thread a little bit and Stephen
Yeah,
Miller's insane, horrific head and brain. And I say this as someone who had to work with him almost every
I'm
day.
sorry. I
And
apologize.
yeah, and his wife. We won't get into that, but they certainly found each other and they deserve each other, is what I'll say.
Can I tell you real quick that I saw them a couple of weeks ago out at Tyson's Mall, and I did a video, and this was while Kilmar Garcia. This was like a few weeks ago. You guys all can see my quick video where I talked about it. So I'm with my son going inside Tyson Mall in Alexandria, Virginia, in Vienna, excuse me. If you know, you know. And we're gonna go return a Lego seat, and I see him and his family get into two big black SUVs, tinted windows, with drivers. He wasn't driving. So that means our taxpayer dollars were paying for two cars for him, with walking out with bags, having a great old time at Macy's. And by the way, he also had bodyguards. And once his family was in, I remember I had to cross him to get inside Tyson's. I had to, right? And he's right there on the sidewalk. No, I'm on the sidewalk. He's right there getting in the car. It's him now. And I just felt compelled, Olivia. I had to say something. I'm smart also. I didn't get in his face. I didn't yell. I didn't spit. I didn't scream. I have a giant yellow bag wearing dad shorts. And I said, you're hurting families, Stephen. You're hurting families. And he heard me because he saw me, but he wouldn't look at me. And then his security guard gets right in my face and goes, you have to keep moving, sir. And I thought about it. I'm like, actually, no, I'm on the sidewalk. I really don't have to keep moving. But my son was there. I said, yeah, sure. I looked at him. He didn't look back at me, Stephen Miller, and I walked away. And I just felt like I had to say something. And then my mom, and because of what you talked about, the vindictive nature of this administration, my family, my parents, my wife is like, why? Like, why? These people are nuts. And I just felt, Olivia, I
Right.
had to say something. I just wanted to share that story with you because
No.
you mentioned Stephen Miller, and just this man was having the greatest time of his life as he was lying to the American public about sending these innocent men right now to die in a foreign gulag. And I felt like I have to say something to this mother effer, this racist. Please continue. I didn't mean to distract you.
No, I mean, actually, if I saw him now in person, I'm not sure what would happen, because I think, there's no love lost. We equally detest each other. He knows that I've called him out. He knows that I know all his little tricks and secrets. He knows that I know that they distort the stats because I was a person constantly going in and correcting whatever people had written so that Mike Pence could say it out loud. And I was like, no, that's actually not true. Let me give you the real numbers. That's not accurate. So I can only imagine what's happening to the immigration stats that they're putting out, what they're stating to the American people when they say that terrorists are crossing our borders every single day. That was a whole narrative that was happening back then. Then it happens to be the invasion, which they're still using today, which is very just personally upsetting to me, because that invasion language leads to horrific incidents on our homeland, as we know, and it leads to hate crimes, but they are doubling down on it. So I'm not sure if I could have even been as polite, if I can say, as you were. So kudos to you, because I probably would have thrown my chancla at him, or I would have taken my mom and been like, Mom, aim the chancla there, because that's where it needs to go, right there, that hit.
The chancla is the slipper, and for South Asia, it's called chappal. So it's the universal weapon of all immigrant mothers. But yeah, you mentioned Stephen Miller because, and I'm glad we're talking about Stephen Miller because I believe, Olivia, the person who's running a lot of this right now is Stephen Miller. When you look at Signalgate, right? If you remember the first Signalgate conversation, JD Vance is the vice president saying, maybe we should wait a month on this strike. And then you get another message saying, no, the White House wants it right now. And I'm sitting there thinking, does the White House want it? Because Donald Trump, when he was asked about Signalgate, and Donald Trump's notorious folks for not using cell phones, emails, right? I actually believe Donald Trump when he said, I don't know what this is. I believed him, Olivia. I don't think he had any idea what was happening. So I sat there and I thought, the person probably giving the order or talking on behalf of the White House? I
Absolutely.
thought it was Stephen Miller.
No, absolutely. And I know, and that is actually how he operates. And so I think Donald Trump now has given him full reign. Before, there were people that would kind of step in and sort of try to figure out how to navigate the Stephen Miller sort of impact of policy and the things that he was doing. I know we certainly did in my office when it came to refugees and things like that. But like now, I think he just feels so emboldened and empowered.
Mm.
And I do think that he's the one sort of, you know, pulling the puppet strings, as I would say. I think that's how he views everyone. And so I think, while we see the chaos and we see the incompetence, I think it's important to remember that Stephen Miller is not dumb, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he is a smart individual. He's very calculated in what he does. Russ Vogt, he's running OMB. He knows how all the federal resources are. He knows how to move the money. He's been, working on that Project 2025 plan for a very long time. So when I see them doing, El Salvador, I was actually, I was thinking about it this morning, like, welcome to my life, right? These are the things that I sit here and like strategize, which I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Why? You're not there anymore. You don't have to figure out his next move to figure out how you're going to counter it, which is like playing wargaming inside when really you should all be kind of trying to help and serve the American people. But, we're not going to go there. But I was thinking
No,
to
I
myself,
think it's
like,
important because
right.
look, I think it appeals to your sense of patriotism. This is your expertise. You know how counterintelligence works, and I just want to say the reason why I want to encourage you to do this. I'm sorry, being masochist. You and I are both masochists in our own ways. Is you understand? You can connect the dots the way people don't.
Well, I was thinking about that because I was like, okay, so which country is next? What's the common thread here between these countries, right? El Salvador, Libya. What's going on through Stephen Miller's head? And it's like, okay, well, human rights abuses, lack of oversight,
Mm-hmm.
likely to bend the rule of law, likely to bend a favor to them. And my biggest concern is that these are basically, we're disappearing people to black sites, and I'm not sure that we're ever going to see these people again. Right?
Yeah, I
They're
don't
going to
think so.
go. And I'm very worried. I'm very worried for that man that still remains in El Salvador. Even the courts are arguing about this because, like, I'm not convinced. I think that's the whole plan. And I think, I think Guantanamo was probably a little bit too hard and maybe too close to home, and it's a military facility. I think if they can just start shipping people off, including apparently American citizens or legal residents with no due process, I think Stephen Miller's like, let's figure it out. What other countries need support? What kind of backroom deals can we negotiate with these countries that may need money, resources? What can we do that completely falls these people off the radar? And to me, that's just completely chilling, because it's not even just what they're doing to immigrants. My question is, like, I think they're testing the boundaries, because who else is going to get sent, right? They're talking about sending U.S. prisoners there, right? They joke about things like that.
Yeah, on Air Force One, Donald Trump openly said that he's willing to send
Yeah,
U.S. citizens to El Salvador. So gaming it out also. I hate using the word gaming it out, but I think people understand what I mean. Is
yeah,
I think
war
you're
game.
absolutely war gaming it, right? It's not a game, it's not playtime, but like you have to just imagine. I think you're absolutely on point. I don't think I'll say confidently, I know that's the plan because they are telling you, and I take them literally and seriously. So when Donald Trump joked about staying in office a third term, I was on it. And I said, this man's not going to leave. And all these people are like, Wad, you're hyperbolic. Wad, you're suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. Folks, they're selling 2028 hats. In 2019, me and a few other folks, I don't know, Olivia, if you warned also, I said he's not going to leave peacefully. And all the centrists and even center left and center right people said, "Oh, Trump derangement syndrome, you liberals, you lefties." And I'm like, "You're not taking him literally and seriously." And then you had the violent insurrection.
You were correct, because in the summer of 2020, that is when I basically had like a red line. It was
Mm,
Lafayette Square, watching what was happening. It was COVID, obviously, with all the lies, but I kept hanging in there and I kept hanging in there. Once he did Lafayette Square, because I had actually been walking the grounds outside, because I was like, I'm not one of those people that like tunes everything out. I was like, I need to see what's happening in our country. So I'm going to leave my office. I'm going to go for a walk with my friend. We're going to walk around, and we're national security people, so we serve regardless of party affiliation, right? Where he was a foreign, like, yeah, diplomatic service officer. So we're walking around and we're just seeing families peacefully protesting. It was growing. So then I go inside and get evacuated for no good reasons. And I have like 12 hours of work to go. And I'm super confused because as a Homeland Security person that day, I was like, what did I miss? Like, are they expecting White House bombing? Like, what is happening right now that they're like clearing everyone out? No, they were clearing it out so they could have his little parade to St. John's Church, clear it out, hold the Bible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
upside
So
down.
when I got home that night, I was horrified. I was watching it all play out and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so at that point, I remember having conversations in the White House, which is why I say you were not wrong. And I was like, what if he doesn't leave?
Mm,
What if he
mm.
loses and he doesn't leave? And so I was like, I'm not okay. Like I took an oath to serve the greater good and to keep Americans safe, right? That's what drove my career the entire time. So for me to stay through that election, I just felt like I can't let this man get elected. Like, I know what he is. I don't need it. I didn't need a January 6th to tell me
Yep.
what he was, right? I knew it was coming. And so, I mean, that's why when I see the 2028 thing, I'm like, okay, how many times do we have to really relive this, or for people to learn to take him seriously? Like, I don't think he plans to leave. He's already throwing it out there. He did the same thing in 2020. Like, he started with the election talk that summer, late summer. I mean, I was watching it from inside the White House and I was like, what is he talking about? Like, what? And then I was like, no, 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 I already know what he's doing.
Yep.
He's kind of setting the kernels. That's what he drops. He does, and I think that is something that we shouldn't lose sight of. I think elected officials need to be paying close attention. I think they need to be making a plan. I mean, it sounds insane, by the way, when I say this, because
I do not think
we're
it
the
sounds
United
insane.
States of America. And it's very hard to say this, but here we go.
I don't think it sounds insane at all, folks. Before we talk about international, I think let's stick on domestic and talk about national security because it sounds insane unless, if only if you had your head in the sand. Folks, this is a man who incited a violent insurrection against our free and fair election. To this day, he refuses to admit that he lost the 2020 election. He did lose the election. They pardoned all of the insurrectionists, including the violent insurrectionists who attacked police officers and have a violent criminal record. He pardoned all of them. Even J.D. Vance was like, maybe don't pardon the ones who were, convicted of seditious conspiracy. And Donald Trump's like, nope, all of them. Not only did he pardon all of them, as of, I think, March, he was open to compensating them. So he wants to give them money. So he has his own brown shirts. He is telling you that he's open to using the military and National Guard against the enemies from within. That's Hitler's language. You see Kash Patel today openly lying about due process. You see Donald Trump over the weekend and Meet the Press when Kristen Welker asks him, is it your job to uphold the Constitution? I don't know if that's my job. He literally said it, folks. How about due process? I'm not a lawyer. And then you're seeing him go after all of the critics And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think this is maybe you guys are being too cynical. He is openly telling you he's open to sending citizens to foreign gulags. So El Salvador, quid pro quo, Bukele, a wannabe Trump, crypto bro. Hey, I get money. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. Oh, you want me to take in all these brown people? Sure, I'll just throw him in a dungeon. Give me some money. We're paying him $6 million. Libya, chaos. You don't even know what's happening in Libya. It's civil war, two governments, right? Quid pro quo. Hey, take all these critics of mine. Take a Chris Krebs. Oh, by the way, America, Chris Krebs is a traitor. Yep, he's a traitor. We said so. Okay, bye. Bye, Chris Krebs. New crisis. So I agree with you, Olivia. They're not just going to disappear. And it goes back to an initial thread because you're a daughter of immigrants. I'm a daughter of immigrants. You and I both know American history. When you're oftentimes the person of color or an immigrant and you're seen as a problem, there's a solution. This is Stephen Miller's solution. And the way they have already framed it, Olivia, and my fear is the way they're going to stay in power or try to stay in power is the following. There is a crisis. We are at war. There is an invasion. I have to declare martial law as the president of the United States, and I have to protect all of you. Don't worry. The elections will come back. We'll just punt the elections for now. We're at a war, which is why I have to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, and I have to go against the invaders from within. Am I being cray here?
No,
Olivia?
I think that's the strategy because it's a messaging strategy. It's what is going to drive everything else. So I think it's the comm strategy that they have set out to do. I think that they still believe that immigration is the strongest issue they had, and that's one of the major issues that they won the election based on. That's their belief, right? And so I think that they think that that gives them sort of a blanket permission slip to use that as the sort of the seed for everything else, so to speak, right? So I think that you're correct. I do think that that is their strategy. I think that they're going to continue to push this. And hence why the word invasion hasn't gone away, even though we know the threat that that poses with rhetoric like that, narratives. They drive hate crimes. They drive domestic terrorism. They drive what we saw in my hometown of El Paso. We've seen it in Buffalo. We've seen it in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's across the board. So
I didn't know your hometown was El Paso. For those who don't know what Olivia's talking about, and let's just spend a second on this because people don't talk about national security. The number one domestic terror threat for the past several years. Can you tell them what it's been, Olivia?
domestic, it's domestic terrorism and extremism. Yeah.
Yeah, it's white
Right.
nationalist, white supremacist terrorism. Islam and Muslims, they always want to say Muslims. Yeah, that's a distant number two. But the number one, just the king for the past several years are these right-wing groups and white nationalist groups that are aligned around this type of white nationalist concept. Of course, there's different, but what we're dealing with is right-wing white supremacist terrorism. That's the number one domestic terror threat. And speaking about the language of Donald Trump and MAGA and how it's directly tied to it, in the 2018 elections leading up to the midterm elections, Donald Trump, folks, in the first administration, if you remember, he was writing a great economy. If I were him, I'd say, look at the economy. I'm dope. I'm great. What did he focus on? Stephen Miller's language of invasion, invasion, invasion. Caravan, 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 right?
Yeah.
I have to stop them. George Soros, anti-Semitism. They're funding the caravan of invaders of brown people and Muslims coming, right? The same month he did that, Robert Bowers, a white supremacist, used the same exact language and reasoning to go to Tree of Life Synagogue and
Yes.
kill Jews. And he said, I have to go punish the evil, filthy Jews for bringing in the evil, filthy Muslims. A few months later, all the way in Christchurch, New Zealand, another terrorist used the same language to go after Muslims. Inspired by that
And live
terrorist,
streamed it.
live
Live
stream-
streamed hack.
and killed 50 Muslims. 2 months after that, in El Paso, I think in August, Patrick Crusius takes a gun, enters a Walmart in Olivia's hometown, and I think kills, 24 individuals?
Yeah.
And
And
for
then
him,
23 people died that day. And many,
23
many
people
injured.
died. And for him, this is key, folks. For him, the invaders weren't black people. That was who was the white Christian nationalist in Charleston? Who went shot Dylan Roof. So that was Dylan Roof. For Dylan Roof, the invaders were black people. For Robert Bowers, the invaders were Jews. For Brenton Tarrant, the invaders were Muslims. And for Patrick Crusius, the invaders were Latinos.
Yeah. It was the
and-
Hispanic invasion of Texas was his wording.
And so, I mean, I don't know why more people don't talk about it. Literally, there's a direct line from the Trump administration, from Trump, Stephen Miller, MAGA, to literally the same talking points of domestic terrorists, Olivia. How come we don't talk about this?
Well, and you won't hear anything now. right? I mean, I have to tell you, so most of the thing, the incident that you talked about, I had to work on, and so I worked the aftermath of them or the immediate, I would say, as they were happening. So I worked the Christchurch, I did Tree of Life, even Palmway in San Diego, I did Texas. Um, I was there, and I can't explain to you how challenging it is to be the person that has to go in and brief on the facts and be like, just so you know, we've seen the manifesto. I've read it. This is what this is. It's a hate crime referencing. And then you're kind of like trying to figure out, like, how do I tell them that it's your language that is parroted in this document right now? This is going to go over well, right? And that was my job. And so I did that during all of those situations. And I have to say, it was like, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, because it was like the arguments that were happening on the corridor. I remember I had an argument with an individual that he was like, well, if you care so much about what's happening in the domestic terrorism and the violence that's happening here, he's like, well, then maybe you should go talk to Pence, and maybe like they'll let you create an office so that you can work on that issue directly. This is a person that, by the way, is supposed to be working on all like terrorism events and issues. But I mean, he tells me that because we both knew what the answer was going to be. Right. I mean, they were not going to like support such an endeavor. And so, and that was when they were purposely downplaying these narratives. I mean, there's whistleblowers that have come forward from DHS that said they couldn't publish the reports on what was really happening there. Right. They wanted it to say Antifa. It was always about Antifa. Remember, when anything was happening, it was like one-sided, pretty extreme. They weren't actually talking about the reality of what these groups were representing. So now we're not going to talk about it at all. I mean, who's the head of the FBI now? Kash Patel. I mean,
Who
do we
traffic,
really think? Yeah,
who literally goes on the YouTube channels of anti-Semites and white supremacists and then lies about it.
join Steve Bannon. I mean, yeah. So Pam Bondi. I mean, are any of these people interested in actually doing the hard work of what's happening here on the homeland? No, they're perpetuating it. They're enabling it. They're part of the whole circle of people that are involved in it. So I think, I don't know what happens in this space in the next few years, because we're not focused on it. And it's also been emboldened. The pardons emboldened it, right? I mean, that's the elephant in the room, so to speak. No pun intended. See what I did there? But
Yeah, I see. This is why they pay you the big money. But this is one of those things. I'm so glad we're talking about this because, look, folks, just sit with this for a second. The number one domestic terror threat in the United States of America for several years running, the number one terror threat to our law enforcement are right-wing groups that are aligned with white nationalists and white supremacist groups. And this administration not only won't do anything about it, is complicit with it, supports it, shares much of the same language, much of the same conspiracy theories. Uh, this is terrifying. But no, they're going after immigrants, illegal immigrants. They're going after Republicans who dare speak out. They're going after the press. They're going after women, transgender troops. Olivia, do I have you for 10 more minutes?
yes, sorry. I was sending it. You're going to laugh just to make everybody. I sent a quick text to my mom from my laptop because I saw somebody said there's white smoke at the Vatican, and I know my mom's tracking that very closely.
Oh, there you go.
So I texted her and I was like, white smoke at the Vatican.
White smoke, white smoke. I hope they please choose a
I
pope that cares
know.
about people. This pope. Well, speaking about the pope, and I'm glad because I wanted to quickly talk about some foreign issues before I let you go. But Pope Francis, folks who are joining for the first time from Olivia's. Hi, this is Wajhat Ali of the Left Hook Substack. Real quick, Olivia, I have a glitch on my Substack. It doesn't show me if anyone's watching. I'm assuming people are watching and commenting, right?
Yes. Actually, I'm reading the comment. Pope to be announced soon. That's how I found out. So thank you. I mean,
That's great. Thank you.
it
So
scrolled really super fast. If somebody said white smoke at the Vatican, and so I literally texted my mom. It was like white smoke.
the reason I mentioned this, Pope Francis was a Jesuit. I was taught by Jesuits.
Of the Jesuits.
Yeah,
Yes.
I went to all boys Jesuit Catholic high school, Bellarmine in San Jose. We were taught to be men for others, faith through service, right? The concept of agape, right? Unconditional love. And the Pope Francis, regardless of your critiques of the Catholic Church and what the institution has done, but Pope Francis himself was a person who lived that life, a life of service, right? And in his
Yeah.
final sermon, if you all pay attention to, what he said, he took huge aims at the Trump administration, and it's demonizing language and conduct against immigrants and migrants, right? And also ceasefire. He cared about Palestinians. He said ceasefire in Israel and Palestine again and again. And the Pope Mobile, folks, is being converted
Yes.
into
Oh my
bulletproof
gosh.
convoy to help these poor civilians in Gaza. The Pope Mobile is being converted to help the civilians in Gaza, right? Because a lot of people forget it's not just Palestinian Muslims, a lot of Palestinian Christians and atheists. It doesn't matter. They're just people. And so we see that Pope, and then we see the Trump administration, right? And so I want to ask you about your fear about what's going to happen in Israel, in Gaza, and with the Houthis, because apparently, according to Donald Trump, the Houthis love him. The Houthis have said it's all good, and now he's praising the Houthis. And then Israel, quid
Oh,
pro quo. Hey, Israel, do what you want. We're going to build. Apparently, Jared Kushner is going to get condos on Gaza. What could go wrong? And Palestinians, go somewhere to the south, somewhere. All of this will be fine. And I'm sitting there thinking this is a disaster for especially Palestinians, but also Israel, Jews. I think is going to create immense insecurity. It's Houthis are in Yemen, Iran, Lebanon, and apparently Donald Trump is a-okay with this because he's going to get a Riviera in the Middle East. Olivia, what did
yeah,
I miss?
I think that's always been Jared Kushner's dream, actually. So, I mean, I think that is the direction that it's probably going. I never, during the election and the campaigning, that was one thing that I think was so frustrating for me. Who was out there trying to talk to people, also remind them of things like the travel ban, remind them of the extreme views that Stephen Miller has on, well, basically anyone that's not white. And so I just remember thinking, like, as I was watching the conflict in Israel and Gaza and everything, I was like, I don't know how people think that this is going to be so much better under Trump because
Oh
their
no,
mentality
we're
doesn't support any of these people. Right? I mean, so I think that this is watching this play out. I mean, we have complete chaos now happening there. Complete, like, lives are being lost on the daily. And we have someone who Donald Trump does not understand foreign policy. You think he cares about this? He has no idea probably what's going on, really. He doesn't even understand the complexities. If you ask him the history of what was happening there, he might have an idea of what's going on, might have an idea of where the region is, maybe. I mean, if someone's probably shown him a map and drawn it out for him, hopefully behind the scenes, so that he doesn't embarrass himself publicly, because we've certainly seen him do that. But so I'm watching this, and I'm concerned because now we're lauding the Houthis, and now he's going to be besties with them, and I think he's trying to figure out, like, economically, what's the advantage for him, because that's really what it comes down to. But there's no advantage here because it's just going to be ongoing escalation and chaos. And so, I mean, I'm watching this, and it's just like watching Pete Hegseth at the helm during this conflict. What's going to happen here? I mean, who is actually the adult in the room that is actually engaging in serious foreign policy? That is my question right now. And I don't see
exactly.
one.
Who's the adult in the room? Like, who
Who's the
knows
adult?
this region? Yeah, and you're speaking about another occupation. Let's not forget, folks. Ukraine is occupied by Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. Facts matter. Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukrainians, like Palestinians, just want self-determination. Ukraine is saying, "Leave us alone. You invaded Crimea. Stop invading us." And Russia says, "No, we want all of it." And Donald Trump echoes, and not just Donald Trump, but this administration echoes Russia's talking points. Another big piece of news that I think shows and really illustrates that Donald Trump has no idea what's happening. I think he's very checked out, which is really troubling to me. This
Right.
piece of news I wanted to share with you, which I think should be way bigger news, but people have forgotten. Reuters, just a couple of days ago, shared that U.S. military aid to Ukraine was paused in early February,
Mhm.
not by Trump, but by, wait for it, Pete Hegseth. There was no presidential order, and the White House and State Department weren't informed. Olivia, why isn't anyone like shouting this from like the
Wow.
roof?
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, why? What's Congress saying about it? Is anyone yelling? Because they should be. Somebody should be yelling it. It should be front page news. So that is pretty crazy to make just an isolated decision like that, just to do it, and nobody knows that it's being done. Or here's the conspiratorial, nefarious person in me.
Do it.
Was there someone behind closed doors that knows that it's being done to help a certain buddy?
Mm.
And maybe that's why they're turning a blind eye away, and maybe that's why it wasn't coordinated, because if they don't know, they didn't know. But once people find out about it, they're like, oh, oops, sorry. Hey, Pete, what are you doing? Why didn't you tell us? Yeah, you got to work that out. Send them
That's
like,
all. That's not Pete. I don't know anything. I'm just the president of the United States. I watch Fox News. I participate in golf tournaments. I don't know. That's Pete. Pete, tell me. I don't know. Uh, the fact that we paused.
you're giving me trauma right now.
Sorry. I'll stop. The fact that we paused. Not we, but the United States paused aid to our former ally Ukraine. Who does that help? And the fact that it was done so secretly, and the fact that nobody knew about it allegedly. Yeah. And yet Pete Hegseth still has his job. Um, Speaking about, okay, so we have a complete cluster F in Europe where the United States has essentially abandoned its allies in favor of Russia. We have abandoned Ukraine in favor of Russia. We have the new governments, right, of UK and probably Australia, Canada especially, saying, okay, we cannot look at America as a trusted partner. We have to unite. So the post-World War II order, where the United States, still the most powerful country in the world, was nonetheless performing with all our sins as a country that cares about the rule of law, despite our hypocrisies, cares about democracy, now has ceded the ground and is siding with Putin, Orban, fascist regimes, Netanyahu, and others, right? So that makes us more isolated. And speaking
Yeah.
about us turning on our allies, Greenland, Canada, Mexico, allies, we are becoming belligerent. Another huge piece of news that should be, if there wasn't 18 fires, this should be leading, right? U.S. spy agencies told to expand surveillance of Greenlanders, and Tulsi Gabbard issues classified order. Trump refuses to rule out use of force to assert American sovereignty over Greenland. What?
Yeah, and reading that headline, that's chilling, because I just can't even imagine what it must be like for the people living there right now. You're literally just living your life. You are, people in Denmark right there too. I mean, because that's really, I mean, I think a focus of this of that. And so just imagine waking up every day and being like, suddenly the US is going to invade us
Mm.
because
And they're
Donald
not
Trump
joking. And it's not a joke anymore.
became obsessed with Greenland. And this has been actually a topic of discussion since the first administration, right? This hasn't gone away. So that's
Mm.
why I remain concerned, because he was bringing up Greenland back during his first term. But you had people like, say what you will about John Bolton, who was like, okay, that's insane. What are you doing? His national security advisors, John Kelly, everyone's like, okay, let's pull him off the Greenland thing, you know, shine a shiny object over here and he'll get distracted by that. And we'll just keep shining different things and see what he's attracted to. Because that's kind of what you have to do with the toddler in the office, is you kind of do that. And then hopefully he forgets about it. And then you can steer him in a like less dangerous direction. We don't have that right now, like I said. So I think he's doubling down on it. And that should be very chilling to the rest of the world, outside of the Viktor Orbáns and the authoritarians that we've decided that we're playing in the sandboxes and who are apparently like our friends now. I think when the rest of the world sees that headline, can you imagine what they all must be thinking? Like, they could carry this out. And if I were Canada watching that headline, I'd be like, what things do we not know about that they're planning about us? That's what I would be doing right now, actually. I'd be looking at my own security posture and being like, when he jokes about the 51st state, how serious is that?
I
What
don't think
things
he's
do we
joking.
not know about?
CNN, I think CNN was the only outlet that covered this, that Putin, I think it was last month in Russia, did a speech where they translated the speech where he said that Russia will get Ukraine and Poland, and the United States will get Panama, Greenland, and Canada. And no one reported
Poland
on this.
talking about.
Yeah. And so can you just connect the dots? Why do they want Greenland so bad?
I think it's access. I mean, it's where we have strategic forces, obviously, but I don't really, honestly, I don't get it. I was like, what, what is the obsession with Donald Trump and Greenland? Like, I mean, what are we gonna encroach on Denmark next? Is that the plan? Like, are we kind of taking over that situation there? Because personally, I don't see it. I don't.
I have one angle, and that angle is based upon the oligarchy that has helped put Donald Trump over the top, and specifically Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, their guru, J.D. Vance, who was hand delivered by Peter Thiel to Donald Trump, specifically in addition to the natural resources and also the fact that it's strategically very important, right? Military, where Greenland, where it's situated, they believe they have identified these safe havens from where they can create like their techno states and rule. And so they're dividing up the world into these different techno states, and they have kind of signaled on Greenland as one of the key places in which they can like divvy up the world in these feudal states. So it's going to be okay. Russia gets this, this, and this. U.S. gets this, this, and this. Trump will give this one to Thiel and Musk and yada yada, and it's all pay for play. Divide
Yeah,
and conquer.
I mean, I that's very well maybe the theory, because I certainly can tell you I don't see the national security kind of view here on how this helps us, especially in the eyes of the world,
Yeah, of
especially
course,
with our European allies.
but it's a
Right?
good
We're
grip.
just making enemies.
You mentioned grift, and I think people always have to remember with Donald Trump, there's always a grift, right? The appetite is insatiable, more and more and more.
Money.
I think the next topic could be a whole other hour, but I just want to quickly talk about it before I let you go because we have to talk about it. I'm not just saying this because my parents are from Pakistan. I have family in Pakistan. Folks, what's happening in India, Pakistan, I think two nuclear powered countries. India is the world's
Yes.
largest democracy. I'm putting in quotation marks because there's a fascist regime right now, but nonetheless, it's 1.2 billion people. Pakistan neighbor has 200 million people. They've gone to war 4 times, if you include the 1999 Kargil incident. There was a terrorist attack in Kashmir, the occupied territory of Kashmir. We still don't know who's done it. But 2 dozen people during tourist season were killed. India blames Pakistan. India has retaliated literally against Pakistan strikes that killed people. Pakistan apparently retaliated against India. They're saying, although India denies it, that Pakistan brought down 2 Indian planes. Huge escalating situation. And Donald Trump, in his leadership, in his utter lack of curiosity, said, it's a shame. We just heard about it. They've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries. He said centuries. Folks, India and Pakistan weren't created for centuries. It was created in 1947. Anyway, he goes, I just hope it ends very quickly.
I don't know that he
That's
knows. Well, he went to India, so maybe he does know where India is.
Do you feel better? Do you feel better with Donald Trump saying that as this is escalating? I mean, can you just can you let people know why this is such a big deal and
Yeah.
why we need actual leaders who know what the F they're doing to de-escalate the situation?
Yeah, I mean, these are two countries that have nuclear arsenals, right? I mean, this, which is very concerning. It doesn't look. I don't see. Maybe you do, Waj, but I don't see the path to de-escalation right now, which is very concerning. Because to me, from what I'm seeing, is like I don't see a diplomatic solution that is going to come forth anytime soon. And so I think that this is going to continue to escalate. And it's certainly not going to be Donald Trump who's going to be the neutral arbitrator, negotiator party, who is in over his head to kind of figure out how to diffuse this. And I think when it comes to both countries, I think what I'm concerned about is it's going to take, one of them is going to have to give. And I don't see what the face-saving resolution is going to be for them to step back from the brink. And so I think this is something that we need to watch very closely. And I say we, people like you and I who care and are watching, like, okay, Rubio, anyone? Can he actually do something and actually kind of take a stand on it or figure out how the United States might lead in this situation or talk to but what friends do we have around the world right now? Oh, wait, we're turning on everyone. So I'm looking at Europe. I'm like, okay, are there European leaders that maybe can help kind of step in because the U.S. has left the role of that? Because Marco Rubio certainly has shown that, he's spineless. He's gone all in. He's drank the Kool-Aid. It's embarrassing to watch the way his demeanor. I mean, really embarrassing.
Son of Cuban immigrants, folks. Marco Rubio. Look at what they make you give. And I think that's very important. That's even with all of our sins, our mistakes, our hypocrisies, the fact that the United States of America, at least in the past, was seen as a democracy, seen as the most powerful country on earth that nonetheless believed in the rule of law, right? A rule-based order. The fact that it could be trusted upon by its allies to use its might. It's been used in the past for evil, but in the way for good, right? You come in, you intervene, you have skilled individuals who understand Central Asia and know the history of South Asia and the Middle East and Israel and Palestine. Come in, right? Negotiate, mediate, lower the temperature because we're dealing with security, global economies. And
Diplomacy.
in the absence of this leadership, you know who's going to step in? You know who's a neighbor? China.
China. Yes.
And this right now, I feel, Olivia, my hope is, I have family there. This is really
Yeah.
it's getting, and you have misinformation, fascist governments, you have religious nationalism on all sides, you have anger, rage. I mean, people want blood. And you're seeing a lot of saber rattling right now. So it's still, I mean, it's bad, but it's still a lot of like tit for tat, mine's bigger than yours. This is what happens. But this could escalate very quickly. And then also you see the empowerment and encouragement of non-traditional forces, extremist forces, who then are, get the, if you will, the wink, wink backing of their governments to carry out terrorism, right?
Yes. Right.
Exactly. And so you see more recruitment and destabilization. You got Afghanistan also right there. So, folks, this is why a rule-based order is important. This is why competent leadership is important. This is why people who understand national security, like Olivia Troy, should be in, DEI, a daughter of immigrants, a woman,
I
right?
am not qualified. So
Yeah, but not qualified, and why DUI shouldn't. Thanks so much, Olivia. This was fantastic. I just got Olivia. I'm like, You'll be fine," and I just gave her like 12 different issues. But that was really good. We went back and forth. My folks usually I give if you have questions, I read them out. But there's something weird happening with my Substack where I can't see anyone right now, so I depend on the kindness of strangers. If Olivia is saying that y'all are watching it and enjoying this, I defer to her. Uh, I want to shamelessly
you're getting
promote.
some thank yous, just so you know. Here's
Oh,
to
wonderful.
thanks, Olivia and Wad.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So, folks, Olivia, before I let you go, I know it's very hard for people of color and women and children of immigrants to promote ourselves because if we were too boastful, we would get the chancla and the chapo. But let's pretend that we're a DUI hire like Pete Hegseth. Confidently promote yourself. How can people support you? How can people listen to you, read you, talk about your Substack and what you're working on right now?
Yeah. So I'm Olivia of Troy on Substack, and that's my social media handle as well. I try to write thoughtful pieces. I know sometimes they're a little bit longer, but sometimes I'll go through and dissect, what I know and the history of what happened the first time around the Trump administration, why it matters now. Sometimes I'll dissect Project 2025 and tie it to how it's playing out. And sometimes I write about the arts. I just wrote about the cuts to the NEA and Trump's fundraising at the Kennedy Center with selling Les Miserables tickets for $2 million because, that's normal. Why not sell tickets for $2 million about a musical about repression and oppression and the people rising? But the irony is not lost on me.
And also now, as of yesterday, they're open to permanently boycotting those artists who rescind their invitations. So, like, oh, you're not going to come to the Kennedy Center because we've completely destroyed this fantastic artistic institution in the DC. We're going to ban you and boycott you. So that's also what's happening, Olivia. I also, folks, write about culture and politics. If you enjoyed what Olivia and I did, let me know. Let Olivia know, because then I'll lean on her to do some nerd talk on foreign policy and national security. I write for the Left Hooks, thelefthook.substack.com. Like a fool, I've kept everything for free. My immigrant parents weep every night. They're like, "Why have you done this?" I have no paywalls, but pay what you can. I'm like Blanche Dubois. I depend on the kindness of strangers. Subscribe. And also, this also gets immediately uploaded to my YouTube channel, which I didn't know I had. A friend made it for me. But if you see this on YouTube, like, subscribe. Everything's for free. Pay what you can. And folks, please be informed. This is important. I hope for those who listened, this was informative, edifying. I hope you see how everything's connected. And also, I hope you see that the attack on the most marginalized, women, people of color, immigrants who look like me, who look like Olivia, it first starts with us, folks. It always starts with the marginalized, but very quickly, in 100 days, it doesn't end with us. You've seen it. They're going after white folks, conservatives, Republicans, the press. They're going after anyone and everyone who opposes this regime. So stay informed, be kind, be active, do what you can, and please, oh, please, don't be a fascist. Until next time, take care. Thank you, Olivia, so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And,
Take care.
and hi to your mama.
I will. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.